this episode, I sit down with Aaron Goodman, an Oklahoma attorney who underwent vertical sleeve gastrectomy in 2019, achieving remarkable weight loss success. Recognizing the lack of support during the 2020 pandemic, Aaron took initiative by creating an online group for post-op bariatric patients, a community that continues to thrive today. A featured columnist in both Weight Matters and Bariatric Times, Aaron is passionate about empowering others with practical information, often reminding us that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Tune in as we discuss his journey, the importance of support systems, and the lessons he's learned along the way.
Do you know what's in your vitamins? ProCare Health does. Made in the USA, it's certified facilities. Each batch is independently lab tested to ensure purity and potency. Why settle for less when you can have the most affordable, high-quality vitamins delivered to your door? Visit ProCareNow.com. Use code BSS10 to save 10%.
I'm bariatric dietitian Dr. Susan Mitchell. You're listening to the Bariatric Surgery Success podcast. I'm so glad you're here today, that you've joined us. It matters where you get your nutrition information. When it comes to bariatric surgery and also the use of GLP-1 medications, nutrition is specific. You're in the right place, friend. Here's what you need to know now. Let's get started. Joining me in the studio is Aaron Goodman, an attorney from Oklahoma who had a vertical sleeve gastrectomy, or VSG, in 2019, resulting in extremely successful weight loss. During 2020 and the pandemic, Aaron started an online group for post-op bariatric patients like himself, since there was very little support available. And the group continues today, passionate about empowering bariatric patients with practical information. You can find links to Aaron's contact information in the show notes. Well, hello, Aaron, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Dr. Susan, for having me this morning. It is an honor and pleasure to be here with your audience and you today.
Well, we are too.
I just appreciate being able to talk about this from the patient standpoint, and that is something that, as you announced in your intro, I have nothing to do with healthcare. I'm so privileged to talk about healthcare. So please, everybody listening to this, if you hear something that Aaron says it doesn't match what your providers say and your program says, please take it to your program.
I'd love you to talk more about your bariatric lifestyle. I know people are going, you're so successful. It's been 6 years, and the way you live day to day is obviously working for you, Aaron. So what is it about it in your day-to-day life? What ensures that you're going to be successful today, but also tomorrow and down the track?
Sure. And so one of the things is that in educating myself and in giving practical advice to your audience and to my friends that are post-operative is I like to have realistic and quantifiable techniques and tools that when things go wrong, how do you get back on track? What happens when you get unexpected or bad regain? Like when you're off program and you've fallen off, you've gone back, you're binging, you're doing everything you shouldn't be doing. You need to be able to find that there's certain benchmarks, like if you're 2 pounds up, 5 pounds up, 10 pounds up, 15 pounds up from where you want to be, what are your stopgaps? What are the tools, techniques, and the strategies that you're employing to bring that weight back down, to reverse the lost ground and retake back real estate? And so those are the kind of things that in consultation with your providers,
yes,
you will find those techniques. So that's important to have in your toolbox. And so in terms of long-term success, because again, over the last 6 years, that has been something that I have had some weight regain and then I've pulled it back off again. Some weight regain, pulled it back off again. And so it was something that I didn't let that 5 or 10 or 15 pounds become 30 or 60 or 80 or 100, which I've had friends do that, but have also they themselves pulled themselves back. It's just harder the farther out you get. So, Dr. Susan, I have 4 things that I really want to convey as far as that I think are core concepts. If you're going to be successful after weight loss surgery, you've got to employ these 4 things.
Let's hear them.
All right. Number 1, most important, mindful eating. These are deep concepts, but these are the important ones. So mindful eating. If you don't understand and appreciate mindful eating and you don't employ mindful eating, then your post-op bariatric life is not going to be as successful as it could be. And that is, again, my goal is to make it as successful. What is mindful eating? In a nutshell, in a super hyper condensed definition, it's being dialed into your eating and not being distracted or not being just rushing through your food. It's being there, being present, being in the game while you're eating. I've heard it described as being able to describe the tastes and smells,
Oh, yeah, for
textures of
sure.
what you're eating. But mindful
Versus the
eating,
bag of whatever it is and the television or something else you're listening to that has your attention, and what is going in has zero attention, and you don't even know what you're eating, how it tastes, nor how much.
and Dr. Susan, can I tell you, I'm an expert at unmindful eating. I mean, so I want your audience to understand that when I'm here visiting with them, and I am not coming from a position of anywhere close to perfection. I'm coming from a position of I have been bumped and bruised and battered on this journey, and I've learned my lessons. So mindful eating, number one, most important. Number two is accountability. I log my food. I
Still do
even weigh
that.
my food, and there are apps out there. I like sort of a big one that's used a lot, but there are other ones as well. And again, I'm not plugging any brand, so I'm not going to say them, but I think people in the community know which logging tools that there are. And even if you just write it out in your handwritten journal, something that is going to hold you accountable for what you're eating so that you know what your macros
Yeah,
are, how much protein
absolutely.
you're taking in, what are your calories, what are your carbohydrates, what are your fats. And so then in consultation with your dietitian, you are able to say, look, here's what I'm eating. If I'm having regain issues, let's explore that, analyze why that might be. And the food log is going to be one of the most crucial tools for that. So accountability,
I
holding
always tell
yourself
people
accountable.
that when they do a food log is that when you have to write it down, it becomes real because you look at it and you go, oh, wow, that's what I really ate. When you don't, you just kind of gloss by it in your mind and say, oh, well, I shouldn't have had that. But when you have to actually write it down and look at it, you can't help but go, ooh, maybe I need to rethink that just a little bit. So there is a real benefit to logging, even if you don't do it forever, or even if you stop, and then start back again when you feel like you've hit one of those points where you're saying, I'm gaining a little weight, I'm not feeling so good about things. You start to track, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that again.
Exactly. And the other thing too is, it's interesting, and I think you probably see this both professionally and with friends of yours that are patients, is weighing. After a certain period of time, maybe 2, 3 years out, a lot of people don't weigh every day. Some people do. Some people weigh every week. Some people weigh less than that. So there is no definitive standard. Do what works for you with regard to weighing yourself on the scale. The scale can be an evil thing, but it's an accountability tool. And that's
Sure.
an important thing. Please understand, and if anything, that I think it sometimes can be hard for people. They put their value in the number on the scale, and that's not it. It's just a metric. That's
Right.
all it is. It's just a metric. It is not your value. If you're up 10 pounds, it doesn't change anything. Get back on that horse and hit it hard.
And it
So
will differ too with the dietitian that you work with, because it's really important to note that if you've had a history of eating disorders or disordered eating, then the scale may feel different to you than someone who has not. And so, how often you weigh, what time of day, how frequently during the week becomes something that's important to have a discussion with your dietitian about, because that will vary from someone else who hasn't dealt with those things.
exactly. Absolutely. And so I appreciate you pointing that out because we all come to the bariatric community or weight loss or eating disorder community with the different needs, and that's spot on. The third thing I would suggest to anyone who wants to have a successful post-operative experience after weight loss surgery is humility. You have to be able to humble yourself and admit that you need education and guidance and help and change, and when necessary, respectful rebuking. Because you know what?
Yeah.
Sometimes we are just wrong and we need to be told we're just wrong. And
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 that's
and
okay.
it's okay is right. And it's part of the process, because how else can we change if we're not given some guidance there? And then the fourth thing I would just say is would be give yourself some grace. And I struggle with this. And this is something that I think is so critical, because you're going to mess up. You are going to disappoint yourself. But that's okay, because
I was just going to say, and that's okay too. That's what makes us human. We're not perfect, and this isn't about perfection.
exactly. And so if you fall off, dust yourself off, get back up on that horse. It's like I like rodeo. So one of the things they say, cowgirl up, cowboy up, get back up.
Yeah.
Get
Oh, I
back
love
up.
that.
But sometimes it can be so hard. And if you're preoperative, you're coming into the bariatric process, you're excited, you're like, man, I cannot wait. And I want to encourage that. Like, I want your preoperative listeners to just be excited about this process, to study what they're getting into, to learn about it, to talk to people that have had it and find out what works, what hasn't worked for them. But the one thing I'm going to say is when you talk to preoperative patients, they go, "So what is it really like?" I say, "Well, prepare to be cold. You're going to be cold a lot more than you used to be, and it's a phenomenon that just expect it, because it's going to happen." And I would just say to the pre-op folks, take lots of photos. It's one of the best pieces of advice ever. Take lots of photos beforehand so you can show your before and after and your progress. But probably the single best thing I can tell anybody who is preoperative is to journal why it is you want the weight loss surgery. And that would be no different than the GLP-1 folks or the combinations, because I have friends of mine that have both been successful at the bariatric surgery and have also had the GLP-1s to just kind of close the
Yeah.
distance
Oh,
at the
yeah. They
end.
work as a hybrid. Absolutely.
So please write down in journals to why you're doing this. And here's why. Because when things get tough and things get lonely and things get really, really difficult, you're going to come back to the why. You're going to come back to the why. Why am I here? What is it that's important? What am I aiming for through this surgery? Well, there's so many good benefits to it. And to stay focused and to stay on track, you come back to the why you did it in the first place. Really, really good thing. I suggest you educate those closest to you and your family, because you're going to want that family support. And I understand each of us are different. And I've heard stories of very, very, very supportive spouses, which is most people or families or coworkers. But I've also heard some horror stories. And so it's important that you let in who needs to be let in, and you don't let in who doesn't need to be let in, because there's a lot of jealousy with people.
Oh, for
And
sure. And I think it's also important to find out before your surgery if your center, often they have a program or a class or a couple of classes that will include having family come in and just have a talk on here's what to expect, not just for the person having surgery, but here's what you can expect. Here's what might change in the family dynamics. Here's what you need to know. So be sure and ask your center and find out if that's a class or several classes that they're going to offer. Well, don't you go anywhere, because we will be right back with some more great information. Do you get my weekly newsletter called Breaking Down Nutrition? It's a quick way to keep up on nutrition for your bariatric lifestyle. You're the first to know about helpful nutrition tips, recipes, giveaways, product specials, the latest podcasts, and upcoming interviews that you don't want to miss, just like today with Erin. It's free, and you can sign up right now on my website, Breaking Down Nutrition. So, Erin, without continued support of some type, weight regain and other issues are quite common, probably more common than not. It seems to me that after the first year, many patients are on their own. They're not going back to their surgical center. Maybe they're not seeing their dietitian. Do you agree with this?
I do. when you get done with your first year, the honeymoon phase, 'cause everything's flying, it's just phenomenal. Your body's working amazing. You're dropping all this weight. You're looking beautiful. You're looking handsome. Everybody is just all on board with everything during your first year.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, look, she looks amazing or he looks amazing. And so that's so fun. But it's so important that we realize that about a year out, people are just going to know you as you're just Susan, you're just Aaron. You're no longer this brand new person who, went from here to here. About a year out, when the luster sort of starts to fade and the whole sort of celebratory aspect with other people sort of fades to normalcy, now it's like you're in the grind and you are doing it for you. And that's what's so important is that you have to be able to appreciate that this is a journey for you and it is your journey. And I know that sounds so cliched, but what's important is when you get done with that first year or maybe 18 months if you've had an extended honeymoon, it's one of those things that you will look back on those previous year or 18 months. That's when you've developed your good habits. I hope you've been
Yes.
exercising.
Yes.
I hope you've been taking your vitamins. You've been connected with your dietitian. You got your blood work done so that you know your vitamin levels, so that you, in consultation with your healthcare team, are being able to balance your needs at that 1 year stage, that you're staying hydrated, that you are being able to stay clued into if you're having any kind of emotional or mental challenges that weren't necessarily there before, that you're addressing those.
And I think too, it's important to understand that, and this amount of time varies for every person. So you can't just hold it to a certain time, but it might be a year for some people, might be less, could be more. But as the neurotransmitters start to change in the brain, which they do, the appetite, the things that make you hungry and make you feel full, the satiety hormones, they start to change a bit. And you may notice that hunger starts to pick up. Your appetite is better, that you're wanting things, cravings may be more of an issue. All of this is normal. This is why sometimes the GLP-1s are added in as a hybrid here when weight gain starts back. With other people, they may not have those strong urges again. So it's important to know that there's a lot changing besides just the scale, but what's happening in the production of the various hormones in the body. So that will affect things as well.
And I think another pivotal concept in successful postoperative life, and I'm glad that you said that, and is the difference between head hunger and stomach hunger. And I think that is one of those things that is so challenging for so many of us that struggle with overeating, whether it be postoperative or preoperative, and that's head hunger versus stomach hunger.
The mental health aspect of this is so critical because when you have head hunger, you have emotional eating, you have stress eating. That's driven by totally other factors in your life versus just the biological need for food. They're two totally different things.
Exactly. Yet the funny thing is that that head hunger, that emotional component will sneak up on you so fast. And it is so hard to distinguish unless you know what to look for to be able to question yourself. And that's part of that accountability. The idea, am I really hungry? I just ate 2 hours ago. Am I really hungry? Or is it that I'm just wanting to eat? And it's that
Or
comfort, or
Yeah,
among
or
other things.
you have to think about your day too. Think about what you go through every day in your work or just what your day is like because head hunger is so driven by emotions. Did someone just say something rude to you? Did someone try to bully you? Did you have a bad day at work? Something that just didn't go right? Did you have a fight with someone that you love? Believe it or not, as the anger, the stress, the loneliness, all of these different emotions are what are behind emotional eating, and they have nothing to do with true appetite, or the body is in need of calories to run. So that's why it's so important to have the mental health aspect of this. When you see that going on and you go, why am I really eating here? What's the driver behind this that I've got to look at before I keep on eating?
That's exactly right. And that's why in the care team, because let's face it, it takes a village to be successful after weight loss surgery. It's holistic. You have to have your dietitian, you have to have your mental health component, you have to have your um, other components that are in there that make up that successful patient healthcare, just coalition, if you will, that the head hunger, the emotional eating, the stress eating, the whatever you want to call it, and however it manifests itself individually for each of us, is to identify that. Because otherwise, what happens is if you don't identify it, you can't deal with it. You can't come up with a plan
Absolutely.
to mitigate it. And so, yeah, I absolutely preach that to anyone that listens because I've lived it. I'm telling you what I've done
Yeah,
wrong, and I want you not to do it
that's
wrong. I
right.
want you
Stay
to be
out of those
so
potholes. Stay out
that's
of those
exactly
potholes.
right. I want you to have such an amazing post-operative experience so that you can look at me and go,
No.
I don't want to make the mistakes that guy did,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what I want.
And
And
that's what you're sharing, which is so great. Why do you think so little attention is paid to men? Beyond the fact that the statistics skew high to women in terms of surgery, I think it's somewhere 80-20, women making up 80% of surgeries. Why do you think so little attention on men?
So I think part of that is it's a number of different factors. Now, again, it is one of those things that if you look at the vast majority, I would say probably other than the surgeons in most bariatric treatment centers, all the clinicians are women. And so I think a lot of times men, we number one struggle with admitting that we need help. I think men struggle a lot of times with wanting to seek help. And then a lot of times when the entire spectrum of the treatment team outside of perhaps a surgeon, perhaps maybe one other person, are ladies, it's hard for guys to want to open up in that kind of environment. I think that's one thing.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment.
I think number two, Dr. Susan, you have a situation where men and women problem solve differently. And so I think that women are very comfortable in a group environment, like in a support group. And I
Mm-hmm.
see very few men come to the support group. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that men problem solve most of the time is let me do it alone. I can handle this. I am the hunter gatherer. I will get this figured out and I will take care of me. And I think that that has something to do with it. I think there is a pride thing with men that a lot of times isn't necessarily a feature otherwise. I think there's a shame issue. I think guys a lot of times will go inward with their problems, where a lot of times I think women will go outward with their
Yes.
problems. And
Yeah,
and
I agree with
the
that. I think I'm so glad that you're sharing this honestly because I think that I can't say not being a man, but I think you're spot on. And what I see just in working with guys throughout the years, it is a different way of dealing things. And that's okay. Again, that's not good or bad. It's how you deal with them.
The other thing I was going to say that at least I was going to throw out there is apathy. I don't think for guys, like for instance, I would say probably 95, this is just me making up numbers, but I mean, just anecdotally, 95 to 99% of people who get post operative removal surgery and cosmetic are women.
Hmm.
Guys don't usually care. I think there's an apathy there. Like if they put on 20 pounds, I'm still down 250 pounds from where I
Yeah.
started. I don't care. Aaron, whatever, I don't care. Whereas for friends of mine that are women that are excited about getting the skin removal surgery and getting into their bathing suits that they haven't been in before, that's a bigger deal. But guys don't have that. I think the second year is probably your most critical year after bariatric surgery. And could
And
we
was it
visit
for
about that?
you? Was it for you your most critical
So
year?
I think for me, it was an ongoing thing, but I do think though, so I had a unique experience in that as a support group leader, that kept me really, really on track. And because when you lead a group, you, good, bad, or ugly, have to put your dirty laundry out there and let
Sure.
everybody see it because otherwise you have no credibility and
Right.
nobody's
You
going to
got to be
listen to you.
authentic if you're going to do that.
to a degree, I too fell into this trap at some point along my journey. And I think for me, it was after year 2, but I see it more in year 2. And that is this. It's the I know everything phase of bariatric surgery. Like, okay, I get it. Yeah, I've been through
Yeah.
it. Like, I don't need this anymore. I don't need support groups anymore. I get it. I have some vitamins or something I'm supposed to take, and I don't need to log my food anymore. And you get this idea that you can freewheel and you can cruise and you can just kind of go awesome after about year 2, from about year 2 and maybe 18 months, honestly. They get this attitude that they don't want to be bariatric anymore. The other thing I was going to say too is that, sort of hat in hand with that, is the social stigma sometimes it comes with being a weight loss patient,
Mhm.
when especially early on, when you go to holiday parties or work parties, or you want to go out with the girlfriends or your guy friends and go socialize, and you're like, hey, I can't drink, or I can't have the chocolate cake to the same degree, like maybe a tablespoon, that's it, like I can't do any more than that, if I even get that much, depending on where I am. And so I do think sometimes that people, until they're in the shoes of the bariatric post-op sort of patient, they fail to appreciate how that social pressure, how much that is, and what the effects of that are. I would want them to talk to their clinical team about, how do I manage
Yeah,
this? How do I do
absolutely.
that? It's just, the most important thing is to be safe, be healthy, and enjoy your life, and know that you are going to have so many non-scale victories, things like that don't involve numbers on the scale, playing with your grandkids, playing with your kids, being able to, run a 5K that you couldn't do before. How about even just going on an airplane and not using a seatbelt extender, right?
Yeah.
And so
Ah,
it's awesome. It is
yes,
so awesome to get to share those non-scale victories with
it
friends,
is.
and I love that. And so that's what I wish for everybody, to have that opportunity to be able to have the best life and to live their best life.
Such great information. Erin, thank you that you were so authentic today, that you have shared what you've been through, but not just what you've been through, how you've turned that into a lifestyle that works and works for you for continued success. I know that my listeners are going to find different tidbits throughout this that's going to help them in their decisions and in their journey. Thank you so much for giving your time today to be here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor and a privilege to be here, Dr. Susan, and I just appreciate your podcast and what you do for everybody.
Well, thank you. And just remember, you heard what Erin said. He shared so much good information today. So here's what I want you to do. Take the time, whether you're thinking about bariatric surgery, whether you've already had it and you're only a year out, maybe you're 2 or 3 years down the road. If you're facing struggles, if you're starting to regain weight, if you're thinking, I'm eating for the wrong reasons, take a step back. Ask yourself, what do I need to do? What help do I need right now? And get it. It's totally okay. It's the thing to do because you are worth it.
Bariatric Surgery Success with dietitian Dr. Susan Mitchell is produced and owned by Practicalories LLC. All rights reserved. Remember, the content provided on this podcast is for information purposes only and doesn't create a patient-provider relationship. It's intended to provide reference material and is not designed to provide medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider regarding any medical issues you have relating to symptoms, conditions, diseases, diagnosis, treatments, and side effects. Podcast guests express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions which do not necessarily reflect or agree with the host, Dr. Susan Mitchell or Practicalories LLC.